Just remember, to achieve any goal, it takes consistent action. It might be 1 minute, 2 minutes, but consistent action every day.
This podcast encourages and empowers you to create your own unique real story, develop your own unique real statement, and discover your own unique real self. The power is yours. Good morning, Winnie Anderson. Previously, episode 1845 of the 12-Minute Convos podcast. It's been just 2 years, 30 days, 12 hours, and 15 minutes since we last recorded that conversation. We covered a ton. We covered the conversations that you have on your podcast. We covered what you do, and we also touched on the personal side of your life in terms of what occurred in an abusive home and how that help you help yourself, and in so doing help others. I'm really happy to reconnect with you, Winnie. What's new? What's going on? Give us an update, please.
Holy cow. It's so hard to believe that much time has gone by. It just seems like the bat of an eye. And it is interesting how much in our lives change in that time period. But then some things stay the same. So I'm still here 7 miles north of Niagara Falls, New York, in beautiful Western New York. And we're so close to Niagara Falls and all the natural beauty in this area. My business has shifted just a little bit, so that's exciting. And I'm doing much more focused on really helping businesses fix what needs to be fixed in their business, address the right root problem so they're not off on tangents. And I've been really focused on helping people achieve their goals.
It's important to you, and it's something that you've stayed true to on your episode 75 on your podcast when you spoke about, the name of that episode, it's headlined Your Sensitivity is Your Superpower. And you're speaking about how an individual had an experience where they're introverted and they're told a certain way to fix something, right? Which is something that speaks to, I think it's not even a blind person giving advice, but I think it's compartmentalized, right? A certain area in terms of what a person should be like. Right. And this has been true to who you are, Winnie. How have you seen it affect you internally over these couple of years?
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. And one of the big things, probably one of the biggest ahas I've had in probably 10 years, is that there's a need to recognize what you can change and what you cannot change. And I don't mean that by, people can't change, people never change. People don't change. And that's a fact. That's a statistical fact that most people do not make the changes that they say they want to make. So at some point, you have to recognize there's a part of me that this is anchored inside of me, and it's not worth it to invest the energy to learn how to change this. For example, I'm not exactly a math whiz. And then after my car accident, I had even bigger issues cognitively. So for me to force myself to become a physics expert, to become a math genius and an engineer, that's never going to happen. I'm never going to be an astronaut. I have to recognize that about myself and then figure out a workaround. I know just enough that I know basic math. I know what I need to know, and I know when to hire somebody to help me. And then I focus on fostering what really are my core strengths. And again, I don't ignore things. I don't abdicate responsibility, but I really put energy in what can change and then take that consistent action. And I think that those are some of the things that people tend to struggle with.
I agree. I as well have that challenge. I think we all as humans, but changing your behavior, your motivation, and addressing self-sabotage is something that seems to, it's like weeds, right? Weeds seem to never need fertilizing, right? They grow. Expand on that, please.
Yeah, well, that's interesting that you mentioned that because gardening is one of my favorite things to do, and I have a pet peeve about this concept of weeds. Weeds, in my opinion, weeds are invasive species.
Hmm.
They're not native. They're not supposed to be where they are, and they don't need fertilizing. That's interesting. What they do is they steal the nutrients, the space of other flowers.
Hmm.
And how that relates to us as individuals is that left to our own devices, I'd hang out in the garden all day. That's not going to make me money. It's not going to help me support myself. So at the same time, it's your environment that is so important, right? So if you are around people who are not driven, who are not focused on the same goals, then you need to look at, is this environment helping me or hurting me? And it's painful to let go of people sometimes, but we all walk our own path, and you've got to make sure that you're in an environment that really does support you.
How has approaching things in your life in this format affected your marriage?
That's very interesting that you asked that. It's been challenging because, of course, I have to learn about my husband. He has to learn about me, and then we have to adapt. And hopefully, you've made a good choice, and you're in an environment that supports you. But there are times when, we're all ego driven to a large degree. There are times when I've had to stand up for myself and say, listen, I'm not going that way. That's not right for me. And then very well, it is a kind of a negotiation, right? That there are times when we have to say yes, when maybe we don't really want to say yes, but for the good of the group, the good of the marriage, you make compromises.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that C word, right? Compromise. My mother
Right.
says bowing is not great to situations like those, but sometimes you need to stoop.
That's great. I love that. Yeah.
So there's that. Now, I feel as though there's a spiritual side that supports all of what is occurring to get you to the place where you are taking on these aspects of knowledge and then applying it. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's a very wise observation. And yes, my faith has been an important part of my life, probably my whole life. And as I would say certainly the last 20 years, I've gotten stronger in my faith, more clarity about my faith. And the most important thing to me is that whatever you believe, believe something, and then be in alignment with that faith. So that I'm constantly challenging myself. Is this really consistent? What I'm going to do, is it really consistent with what I say I believe? Do my actions reflect what my beliefs are? And I try to extend that into my business actions. And I treat clients with a high level of, in my opinion, alignment with my faith. I try to when I market my business, when I get into agreements with vendors, I try to do everything I can in alignment with my beliefs. It's important.
Well, that's great to hear. Now there's a concept of death, right? Like we face death every second of our life. Do
Yes.
you even have that conversation? And if so, how does that impact your daily activities?
I've had that thought, that reflection several times in my life, especially several times in the last 20 or so years. I was in a car accident 20 years ago, actually almost 21 years ago in 1999. So I should have died. The EMTs on the scene, I actually met one of them later, about a year or so later, and he said, we thought you were dead. So when you live through an experience like that, and of course I have injuries that I had to overcome that continue to stay with me. And then I've had certainly loved ones in my family die. My mother had open heart surgery about 15 years ago. So when you face those moments, you have to ask yourself, am I ready? And you know what? I am. It's not something I want to have happen tomorrow or even today, but I recognize I'm not in charge. I can just do my best while I'm here. And I do believe that I have an assignment. I have a series of assignments, and I've got to take action to fulfill them. I'm sure you're familiar with the line in scripture from I think it's the talents segment where parable where the master says, "Well done, good and faithful servant."
Yeah, it's the one thing we look for, right?
That's exactly right. It's the hope. Yes.
Definitely the hope. Well, you said everything you want is on the other side of fear when we last spoke, right? I've heard the acronym FEAR, meaning false evidence appearing real. Are you still making sure that you're on the other side of fear, Winnie?
That's a great question, too. You ask so many good questions. It's something that I continually have to push myself with. And I think that's true for many of us, that there are things that we're afraid of. I think it's our greatest area of growth, that if we can just take that action. And actually, one of the things that I do with clients is I work towards helping them achieve their goals. And all you need to do is take one action every day. Just take one action every day.
Well, Winnie, oh my, this has been such a great pleasure. Of course, amazing audience, you can check out the podcast. Winnie is the host of The Courageous Entrepreneur, right? You can also check out winnieanderson.com. Is there any other thing that you would like to share in closing, Winnie?
Just remember what I just said. To achieve any goal, it takes consistent action. And it might be 1 minute, 2 minutes, but consistent action every day.
Again, amazing audience, Winnie Anderson. Thank you for being on What is Inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. This podcast is produced by Pod Edits. Visit podedits.com for professional podcast publishing.